Now, because Michigan continues to get national attention, NBC News has spent the last year checking in with Kent County Republicans who could swing the election. Reporter Dasha Burns was back in Grand Rapids today, checking in with those voters to get their reaction to last night's chaotic debate. Here's a sampling of their reaction.
You have voted Republican in every election since you were eligible to vote. What do you say to other lifelong Republicans who might be uncomfortable with Donald Trump but don't necessarily align with Democratic policies?
And I don't. Even though I'm going to be voting for Vice President Biden, there are a number of his policies that I disagree with. I'm a staunch Second Amendment supporter. I'm pro-life. But I also believe that the danger of another 4 years of the Trump presidency far outweigh those. And I truly believe that as the leader of just one branch, one co-equal branch of our government, that there are other opportunities to explore those policies and to push for what I believe.
Today, and after what you saw last night, which candidate, which party do you feel like is doing a better job reaching out to moderates like you?
Well, I definitely would say the Biden campaign is. I thought he really spoke to the American people last night. He looked directly into the camera, was empathetic, really tried to place himself, I felt like, in our shoes. And he really stood up and, did his best to brush off any of the Trump attacks.
Last time we spoke to you, you were sort of back in the Trump camp a little bit after the RNC. What did you think of the president's handling of the debate last night?
I think he kind of came off like a bully. He did bully Mr. Biden a little bit. Of course, he should have just shut his mouth at certain times and let Joe explain. And other times, Joe should have shut his mouth and let the president explain.
Dasha Burns joining us now in Grand Rapids, and we know that you've been talking with these same voters since last fall. Did last night's debate do anything to change their minds at all?
Yeah, Lindsay, we have been tracking a group of voters since last November. We're coming up on our one-year anniversary with some of these folks, and it's been fascinating to see their evolution. We met several Trump voters back in November who have since had a pretty complicated journey as this election cycle has had so many twists and turns. The short answer about last night's debate changing minds is no. Just about everyone I talked to said there was not really enough substance to grab onto whatsoever. The one undecided voter we talked to told us it did not give him any clarity. Some of the other Republican voters, though, we've been following had made up their minds a little while ago that they were planning to vote for Biden, and last night did sort of solidify that, although I don't think anyone came out of that 90 minutes happy, Lindsay.
Yeah, and I am wondering, one moment from last night, the president choosing not to condemn white supremacy. Did those voters at all speak to that moment or have a reaction to that?
It's interesting, as I've been following these individuals over the course of this last year, there's a lot that's happened that's completely changed our lives, the pandemic, of course. And even though everyone has been affected by that in some way, one of the biggest issues that has really moved the needle for people is the Black Lives Matter movement. The death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor have affected people in a way that was surprising. When I was making those calls asking for updates, has the pandemic changed your mind? Has the, downfall of the economy changed your mind about anything? There were little incremental shifts here and there, but it was when George Floyd died and when these protests happened and the president's response to those protests that had a lot of particularly suburban voters pretty concerned with his rhetoric. One of the women I've been talking to pretty frequently, Katie Moore, she's a mom of two. She was incredibly offended by his law and order rhetoric, targeting the suburbs, targeting what Trump has referred to as suburban housewives. She told me that was something that was probably the biggest turnoff of all to her. And so last night, to hear the president refer to the Proud Boys and say, stand back and stand by, that really struck a serious chord, and not a good chord for the president with some of these suburban voters, Lindsay.
Now, we also know that you've been talking to voters in several key states. So how would you compare what you're experiencing here in Michigan and Kent County to the other swing states you've been visiting?
I've been hearing a lot of similarities, actually, from voters, even across the political spectrum. Folks are concerned. A lot of people are struggling. They're worried about their health. They're worried about the economy, keeping their businesses open. And I get the sense from a lot of voters right now, Lindsay, that they're getting to a point where they're seriously fatigued with this election. Even folks that were incredibly engaged when we first met last year are now saying, I don't know how much more of this I can really take. And I'm hearing that from one side of the country all the way to the other, Lindsay.
All right, Dasha Burns, thank you, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more of you. We appreciate it. You can catch more of the county-to-county reporting on the streaming service NBC News Now and live on MSNBC.